Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Anu Joshi and I'm a real estate broker based in Toronto in the GTA and the founder of Anuvision Group. Today on the channel, we have Katie Steinfeld, who's the broker of record and co-founder of On the Block Realty and On the Block Auctions. Welcome, Katie.
Thanks, Anu. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, awesome. Katie, tell me a little bit about your company, different from the traditional real estate model. So tell me a little bit about your brokerage and your company.
Yeah, so On the Block is both a real estate brokerage and an auction company. They're two separate companies. They were founded back in 2017. My partner and husband, Daniel, co-founded it, and we've been operating in the Greater Toronto area ever since. Currently, we've got a team of about 25 agents that do mainly residential real estate. I would say the auction component isn't a huge part of our business at this point, but it's definitely been a great opportunity to offer a different option to consumers. And it's been a good learning experience over the last several years.
Yeah, of course. And I know there's a lot of talk in the media and in the public about open real estate auctions, about the offer process and, being fair to consumers and to buyers. And there's a lot of chatter about that. So can you tell me, basically, for someone that doesn't know how exactly real estate auction works, what's the one-on-one?
Yeah, great question. I think if you're looking at, say, Australia, for example, because they do a lot of real estate auctions and most of them are done on, the front lawn of a home. People are live. There's a very quick talking auctioneer on the front lawn trying to bid people up. So we looked at that option when we first went down the road of considering this as an option in Ontario. We quickly realized that the market or the industry isn't very, at least in our geographic area, isn't very familiar with auctions. Most people assume they're for either estate sales or for super luxury homes, not usually for the residential real estate market. So we created a platform that can be used for residential real estate. And the way we do it is it's very similar to a traditional resale listing. We still list on MLS. We still cooperate with realtors. Showings are conducted the exact same way. The only difference is really how we come up with the final selling price, and that's done through an online platform. Buyers and their agents will register to bid on the property, and on a set day, usually for a few hour time period, the auction opens and allows whoever's interested to bid. Anybody can see what the price is at, and the seller is protected through what's called a reserve price, so the minimum price at which they would accept for the home. And so long as that price is met, then the home will sell to the highest bidder.
Okay, that's great. So from the seller point of view, if there was a seller that was considering this type of sale in the GTA, what would be some of the things that would attract them to this process?
I think the biggest ones are likely the ability to control the terms. So when you're dealing with an auction property, you are indicating you're basically ensuring that everybody's agreeing to the exact same terms. So the closing date, the deposit amount, if there's any conditions. Most of our auction properties are under the agreement that they are condition free, although we have offered conditions in the past. That's up to the seller. But at the end of the day, the seller has control over all of those terms. And it can be a much more efficient process because once you list the property, similar to an offer date, within 7 days or so, the property goes to auction. So it happens relatively quickly. So through that, the seller has a bit more control over all of those factors and isn't as confused when they're presented with different offers, with different terms and wondering, which one's better, which one should I, trust more, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is that it makes the process streamlined and allows the seller to get involved in the terms and conditions of the offers that are incoming. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. That's great. Because I know that for the most part in a traditional resale process, we look at the offer process is the buyer and the buyer's agent putting together, whatever terms and conditions. Sometimes the listing agent and selling agent have had a conversation ahead of time, talk about the closing, talk about their client's preferences. But oftentimes it's just, random buyers putting random terms on paper. So I can definitely see the attraction for that. If we look at the buyer side of things, what would attract a buyer or buyer's agent to participate in a property auction this way versus the traditional offer process?
I think for most buyers that we've spoken to who have participated in our auctions, they've felt that they feel more comfortable making an offer and increasing their offer because they know what other people are offering. And I think that's a very common concern amongst a lot of buyers, especially obviously when they're participating in a bidding war. And a very common question, and I'm sure you get the same thing, is, well, what are the prices of the other offers? And they're very surprised to know that we don't have that information. And it seems kind of backwards in a sense. We've been doing it for so long this way, so it's kind of normal for us. But for a buyer, especially a first-time home buyer coming into the market, it's very confusing. And so I think for most buyers, they can see what the price is at. And a lot of our buyers who are interested in a property will register to bid, but they might not end up bidding because the price might have gotten beyond their means and they can just move on. They don't have to worry about there was an offer submitted. Now they have to wait until, midnight for a decision to be made, that kind of thing. They can kind of just go in if they feel comfortable participating, they do. And if not, then they can move on to something else.
Yeah, that makes sense. So the price is published on this web portal and it gets updated live?
Yes, exactly. It's done in real time. People can see there's, every buyer is kept confidential, but there's the first few letters of their username will be there. So it just kind of shows the history of the bids and people can kind of see where it went and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's great. And it's really great for transparency too, I guess, from the buyer's point of view that, I do get that question a lot, especially when we're participating in multiple offer situations, for clients that have won offer process, they're like, okay, well, what was the next highest? Just for, information. We just want to make sure we didn't overbid by hundreds of thousands. And as you mentioned, we can't actually tell them that information because that is considered confidential. So in terms of the auction process and how you declare certain information and not, have you gotten any sort of resistance from, organizations or organized real estate or anything like that for your specific process?
Yes. We've gotten through it. But yeah, definitely when we first started, I think there was a lot of misunderstanding. First of all, I think a lot of the industry thought that we were trying to take the agent out of the process.
Okay.
And we've had a lot of discussions with agents in the past, and some of them are concerned that this process eliminates their value in terms of the negotiation process, which I understand that, but we as agents, and I'm a practicing agent as well still. And, I think our value extends way beyond, especially when you're in a multiple offer situation, the ability to negotiate decreases quite a bit. So it's not like you have that ability anyway in a traditional bidding war process. So I always equate it to that. But your value comes down to guiding the client, doing the research into recent comparables and doing all that analysis and that experience that you have. Is what's valuable. So I think that was the pushback originally from the industry. But with each auction that we have done, we found that people become more educated, understand where we're coming from. And really it's from a position of offering more choice and some transparency to consumers. I think the industry, it's tough because we opened a separate company because we knew the rules within real estate stated that we can't disclose the contents of offers. So that's why we created a separate company. And because no other company had really done that in Ontario, I think there was a lot of newness that people had to navigate around. And even from a RICO perspective, they're like, I don't we need to interpret this, is this? Yeah. So I think there was just a lot of discussions at first, but we got through them. And I think, coming from just a place of wanting to understand people's concerns and try to come at it in a way that you're not being combative was really helpful. So yeah, it's been a good process. It's been a great learning experience. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. That's great to see. And in any industry, we see developments and mostly they're for the better of the industry, right, as a whole. And as you mentioned, offering choices to sellers and to buyers as an alternative, which is great. Now, I also know that there is some little chatter happening about the open and closed offer process in terms of the Teresa Trust in Real Estate Services Act, which came out in 2019, and it's making its way through some consultations and whatnot. Can you comment a little bit about the open versus closed process, like what we were talking about, releasing of information and the content of buyers' offers? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think it's also great because it does offer more choice to the consumer. What we've learned through the auction process, however, is ultimately it's up to the seller how they want to sell their home. And most people will navigate to the tried and true way of selling their home in the traditional way because it works, right? So, and that's why I've said at the beginning, a lot of our business isn't a lot of auctions at this stage, just because most people, they like to hear about the option, but at the end of the day, they're like, it's great, but I might not want to do that for my own home. So a lot of the people that have jumped, that wanted to do an auction for their home were people that have gone through the bidding war process on the buyer side and just really been frustrated with that. So I think, the open process is a great option to consider. Again, it brings more transparency. I just wonder how many sellers are going to choose to open up certain parts of the offer for buyers to see, because some people, like a lot of people, don't think that will improve the seller's final selling price. I think it depends. You're going to have, and we've seen this in a closed bidding process, offers that are within a couple $1,000s of each other, and then offers that are, $50,000, $100,000. So it really depends on the situation. So it could work in the seller's favor and it could not. So I think for most people at this stage, until maybe there's a little bit more uptick and people starting to want to do it more, I think most people will be like, okay, that's great to know, but we'll just hold off for now.
Yeah, fair enough. And then with the, just going back to the auction process for a second, you mentioned that the seller has an active role in choosing like the terms and conditions, the closing date and the deposit and whatnot. So the buyers that are going to participate in that auction on that portal, they would receive a copy of what the seller's expectations are. And is it a requirement that they meet that, or is that a suggestion?
That's a great question. It's all online. So all like our listing details are on the platform 1 week once we list the property. So the agreement of purchase and sale, which is a standard ARIA form, is on there with all of the terms and conditions. So that buyer's agent can take it, review it, make sure they're comfortable with it. We are open, or we do ask sellers if they'd be open to early offers, which would be done in the traditional way. And, if somebody doesn't want to agree to the terms or something isn't going to work for them, maybe it can be something that might be worked out through an early offer if we feel like it's a good route to take for the seller. So that is an option. And if there is a specific term that's not a big deal that we could potentially add on to the agreement for everybody, it's also a discussion. So we're always flexible and kind of exploring different ways to make it work for people. So that is an option.
Okay, great. So once you're on the portal, though, if I'm participating as a buyer or if I'm representing my buyer on auction day within those, few hours, all the terms and conditions that are listed there is something that I would have to meet. I can't deviate from that aside from price. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I can see how that would be a very, very streamlined process. If we go back to talking about the open and closed offers and the seller, opening up some information and not others, I just wanted to touch on the fact that price isn't the only thing that goes into an offer, right? There's so many other things. I've seen deals not happen because the buyer and seller couldn't meet on closing date or the conditions or, a number of things. And so that would, I like in terms of your process that everything there is streamlined. It's outlined and everyone knows what the content of the other offers is because it's essentially the same, aside from price, which is public.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it makes it a lot simpler. And for sellers, they don't want to be inundated with all that information. Like, oh, well, if it's 2 extra weeks, like how much will it cost me to bridge finance? Like it becomes very complicated. Yeah.
I can see that. I've had sellers doing those calculations with their banker while we're reviewing offers, and I can definitely see the value of sort of circumventing that and having it streamlined.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. So in terms of the future of on the block auctions specifically, I know you're running a great brokerage. It's a boutique brokerage. I love everything that you do. I've seen a lot of it on Instagram and your website. So that's amazing. But in terms of your auction company, what do you see in terms of the future? Do you think more people will adopt this sort of selling? Do you think more companies are gonna offer this? What's your take on that?
I think it will become a more of an accepted practice down the line as more people adopt it. And I think allowing agents to offer an open process will help facilitate that as well. We are currently revamping our website, just making it more user-friendly, just more just videos and explanations for people as they navigate the website. So that's in the works right now. I think it's got to be a balance between I always say traditional, but just the way we're doing it right now.
Right.
Because traditional is not bad. I always think that that's a bad thing. It's not. But the way we do it now, but also offering different options when it makes sense. And what we find is auctions, because we're not doing a lot right now because auctions are built on competition, and we're starting to see more competition for properties, but a lot of the competition still comes with conditions these days as well. So it really I find it's very market dependent, and there's been other companies that have come out strictly offering auctions, and they haven't done so well because in the times where the market isn't as great for sellers, it's not really a viable option that makes sense for them. So I think, options that offer more choice to consumers are great, and that actually address a need, which I think transparency is important. But again, it does take the industry as well as consumers to want to, partake in that sort of thing. So again, as I said, the open process, I think will help see that through.
Yeah. That's amazing. And I like that you're offering it as an option, and you still do I'll say traditional offer process. And again, at the end of the day, it's up to the seller, and it's their property, it's their investment, and how they want to, work with that. And it's great that you're offering that option. So that's really great to see.
And we've also worked with agents from other brokerages as well. So if an agent does want to explore this, we did one in Kingston last year, which did really, really well. So it is an option because it's not through our brokerage. Agents can use our auction company as a third-party service as well. So it's open to that too.
Right. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing all of this information. And for our viewers, I will put all the details for Katie's companies, both of them, in the description box below. So you can reach out to her if you have more questions about real estate auctions or about real estate in general. Katie, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me about this very, very important topic that not a lot of people know about. So I'm so glad that you took the time to share that with me today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.